Extremes of intelligence and creativity. Intellectual disability is characterized by having, first of all, a low IQ, below 70, and also a difficulty adapting to the demands of everyday life, and exhibiting these characteristics by age 18. So let's say someone has an IQ of 68, but they're doing just fine holding down a job and living independently and making friends, then we wouldn't say that they had an intellectual disability. About 5 million Americans do fit the definition of having an intellectual disability. The most common causes are fetal alcohol syndrome, where the mother drank alcohol during pregnancy, chromosomal disorders such as Down syndrome, and severe neglect. Whatever the cause, the vast majority of individuals with intellectual disability, almost 90%, fall within the mild range. This classification is based on an individual's IQ score, though. Another way to classify intellectual disability is by the level of support required for a person to function at their highest level. This is what that classification system looks like. If someone is classified as needing intermittent support, that means that supports are provided as needed. The individual may need occasional or short-term support during life transitions, such as a job loss or an acute medical crisis. It doesn't matter whether they need high or low intensity of support when it's provided. What matters is that it's only needed once in a while. Limited support means that supports are intense and relatively consistent over time. They are time-limited but not intermittent. They require fewer staff members, and they cost less than more intense supports. So basically, they don't need support all the time, but they do need it on a regular basis. Extensive support means that support staff need to be involved on a regular basis, usually daily, without a time limit, such as extended home living support. Finally, pervasive support means constant, very intense support needs to be provided in all settings. Sometimes the support involves keeping the person alive. This level of support requires more staff and is more intrusive than the other support categories. On the other end of the spectrum from intellectual disability is intellectual giftedness. Individuals are classified as gifted if they have either an IQ of 130 or above, or if they have superior talent of some kind. So, for example, if you have a child with an average IQ who is in the 5th grade but has a 10th grade mathematical reasoning ability, then that child might be said to be gifted in math. Approximately 6% of U.S. children are classified as gifted and talented, but it might be more because tests of giftedness typically focus on academic skills, so they often fail to identify students who are exceptionally creative or who are gifted in the performing or visual arts. 3 characteristics of gifted children are, first of all, that they are precocious. They begin to master areas earlier than their peers, and learning in a certain domain is more effortless for them than for other children. Second, they tend to march to the beat of their own drummer. They often prefer to make discoveries on their own and solve problems in their own unique ways rather than be directly instructed. And third, they have a passion to master whatever area it is that they're gifted in. They tend to have a strong personal interest in it and an ability to focus on it, so they don't need to be told to work on it because they naturally gravitate towards it. Typically, giftedness is domain-specific. What that means is that people who are gifted tend to be gifted in specific areas. Just because you're brilliant with computers doesn't mean that you'll also be brilliant with other things too. In fact, it's not uncommon for gifted children to also have a learning disability. For example, someone might be gifted in math but struggle with language arts because of dyslexia. When that happens, they are said to be called twice exceptional because they have special needs related to their giftedness as well as special needs related to their disability. Because of this, and because of the qualitatively different way that gifted children learn, it can be difficult for schools to adequately educate them. Too often they are just given more of the same work as everyone else to do, as opposed to being given more challenging work or work that allows them to explore the subject creatively. As a result, they can become disruptive, skip class, or lose interest. Or they might be pushed too hard by overzealous parents and teachers, causing them to burn out and not want to do it anymore. A final but important concern is that African American, Latino, and Native American children are underrepresented in gifted programs. A lot of that underrepresentation involves lower test scores for these children, which may be due to a number of reasons, such as test bias and fewer opportunities to develop language skills such as vocabulary and comprehension in underfunded districts. Intelligence is not the same as creativity. It's not just about how well you think, it's about how you think. Conventional intelligence tests measure convergent thinking. In other words, they measure how good you are at finding the one correct answer. Creativity requires divergent thinking. By contrast, divergent thinking is about producing multiple possible answers to the same question. An example of a convergent question would be, what are the components of an owl's diet? Or how many quarters are in $5? There's an actual one right answer. An example of a divergent question would be, how could this have gone differently? Or what different strategies could be used to solve this problem? Creative thinking is increasingly important as new technologies and a global economy are constantly generating industries and problem-solving opportunities that never existed before. Employers need people who can think quickly and creatively to stay on top of an ever-shifting landscape. Unfortunately, creative thinking appears to be declining. There is increasing concern that the heavy emphasis on standardized test scores has harmed students' creative thinking by forcing them to focus their attention on memorizing information. In an attempt to undo or prevent some of this damage, here are some strategies for increasing creative thinking in children. An easy but effective one is to encourage brainstorming. This is a technique in which people are encouraged to come up with creative ideas in a group, play off of each other's ideas, and say practically whatever comes to mind that seems relevant to a particular issue. A key element of this process is to hold off on criticizing any of the ideas until the end of the brainstorming session. Another strategy is to provide environments that stimulate creativity. Provide exercises and activities that stimulate children to find insightful solutions to problems, not just answers to questions. Don't over-control students. Instead of telling them exactly how to do things, give them some options and give them time to figure it out for themselves. Don't go overboard on prizes. It's okay to give some material rewards like gold stars occasionally, but if you want them to develop a sense of satisfaction from the work itself, then you want them to develop an internal motivation. Not everything has to be a competition or a grade. Build children's confidence by encouraging them to believe in their own ability to create something worthwhile. Guide children to be persistent and delay gratification. Many creative projects take months or even years before you see them come to fruition. You have to work hard and be patient. Encourage children to take intellectual risks. A major barrier to creativity is the fear of failure. Give children the opportunity to work on ideas or projects that may not work and let it be okay if something goes wrong. Finally, introduce children to creative people. Invite creative people to your classroom or ask them to describe what helps them be creative or demonstrate their creative skills. Meet writers, poets, musicians, scientists, and others. Doing that can help stimulate students' creativity.